First Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell joins us once again. He's demanding the unredacted Mueller report. Of course, he sits on the House Judiciary and Intelligence Committees. This is Jim Comey, the former FBI director, talking this afternoon on CNN about the release of the report and the timing of the whole thing. Watch this.
Bill Barr, our Attorney General, deserves the benefit of the doubt. Give him a chance to show us what he feels like he can't show us. I have to imagine that former Director Mueller wrote the report with an eye towards it being public someday, so I can't imagine a lot needs to be cut out of it. But let's wait and see. The Attorney General deserves that chance.
Do you agree with that?
Well, we want to make sure we see the full report as soon as possible. We're going to authorize subpoenas but not issue the subpoena, but Congress voted just a month ago 420-0 in a bipartisan fashion for us to see the full report. Also, the public paid for this investigation. They should see the full report, and the person who believes that he is fully exonerated should fully welcome us seeing the report.
I think the president has said he wants to see the full report. I think pretty much everybody has said, but I think that the full report definition is different for different people based on the grand jury testimony and some of the parts of the report that might reflect on people who, do not have there's no reason for them to be sort of put out there publicly by this report. So do you agree with those exemptions?
Yes, if there's no reason for the public to know about someone's cooperation, I agree. But what I don't agree is that the grand jury information should shield important, relevant witnesses from having their information out there.
And who are they? Tell me what would you be disappointed not to get? Who do you want to read more about in terms of the background documents that I know you want?
Every person who met with the Russians at the Trump Tower meeting, every person involved in the Trump Tower Moscow negotiations, any person who knew about the WikiLeaks effort to hack and release the Hillary Clinton emails, and any person who knew about the actions the administration has taken to benefit the Russians.
That's what I thought. So, I mean, even though it appears that there was no collusion, according to the summary of the principal conclusions that we got from Mr. Barr, you still think that that's valid ground? Because in the letter he said, it's obvious that there was outreach, but there was no conspiracy and there was no coordination, but that's not enough for you.
No, because that relates to a criminal matter, not national security, counterintelligence matters. We have a responsibility. If we're going to protect the ballot box in 2020 from another attack, the public should know and the nation's leaders should know who worked with the Russians, what the government response was.
The
report
says
adequate.
That they didn't work with the Russians. That's the point that I'm making.
Well, no, the report, the Barr opinion letter said that it didn't reach the standard of proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Without seeing the full report, I don't know if that's the case or not. But I want relevant information out there for the public. I believe that if there is confidential, personal identifying information about people who had nothing to do with this, we should protect their privacy. We can do that. But first, Congress should see the full report and then make that decision. So,
but then, in the same breath, I know you spoke with Neil Cavuto, and you said you don't have to have the Mueller report to see all the president did do. So do you want the report, and do you need the report, or is the report going to come out, and if it doesn't have the things that you're hoping for, you're going to say, oh, that doesn't matter anyway, because I already know that there was, a lot of egregious behavior here?
Well, there is what we've already seen in public, and we can't, wash that away because the president wasn't criminally indicted. But I imagine that there will be additional information that will guide us as we seek to protect the ballot box. And so I will accept every word, every period, every comma if I'm able to see it, but I'm not going to accept that I can't see it and that the president
And are you okay with him taking the time that he needs? He said, for like 15 days from now or less. So I don't know why there's this tomorrow date. It sounds like you're not going to issue subpoenas tomorrow, correct?
We're going to authorize subpoenas tomorrow. We're going to continue to work with them, but the public should see a report that it paid for, and we should know as our nation's leaders what we can do to protect our democracy.
Let me ask you a quick 2020 question before I let you go, because there was a report that you were quoted as having said at an event in San Francisco, don't tell anybody, but I'm announcing in 2 weeks. So are you announcing for the presidency in 2 weeks to run?
I did not say that, but I will tell you, I've made a decision. I will announce it soon, and the reason I care so much about what the Russians did is because they didn't do it just to benefit themselves from a transactional relationship with the president. They did it to tear down the idea of America, that no matter who you are, where you're from, what you worship, who you love, you can be anything. And if that can be true in America, it could be true in Russia. They don't want it in Russia. I want to protect it still here in America.
Listen, I think you're going to do well on that, because I think think everybody's on the same page. Nobody wants the Russians to be able to influence our election or, to influence anything. And, one of the people who worked at the CIA for 30 years said that the dossier looked like a classic Kremlin disinformation campaign. So I hope you're going to pursue that side of it when you get all the documents as well, correct?
Free markets, free ideas, and a freedom to dream. The Russians don't want us to have that. I want to protect that. I benefited from that.
Okay. So do you want to know if the dossier was a classic Kremlin disinformation campaign?
Of course.
So you'll be digging into that when you get these documents as well, because a lot may come out when all of this comes out that will be of interest to, I think, a lot of people on all sides.
Absolutely, Martha.
All right, Congressman, thank you very much.
My
Good
pleasure.
to see you tonight.
Thank you. You too.
Now, although I wasn't physically here with you on the program, I was certainly watching all the news unfold very closely. And I remain disgusted by the utter politics surrounding this entire event, this entire investigation. Political. I'll tell you one thing. I never expected anything different. This was exactly the outcome I predicted. And it's because I have a lot of sources. And I have an ear to the ground on all of this, and have for the last 2 years and during the run-up to the election itself. If there was any there, in terms of the president and his handlers colluding with the Russians to steal the election from Hillary Clinton like the Democrats wanted to believe in the mainstream media, I would have heard something credible along the way. But I heard nothing but a whole bunch of innuendo and sour grapes. Too often, politicians and my fellow members of the media forget that they're supposed to have their own viewpoint. They forget that they ought to be their own man or their own woman. And instead, they follow these talking points handed to them by people that are A, not bright, and B, selfish. Talking about the blind leading the blind. Not smart, selfish people telling other not smart, selfish people what to think. These talking heads and so-called reporters that jumped on the collusion bandwagon did so not just because that's what the establishment was telling them to do, but because they simply couldn't accept the results of our election. Imagine that. Americans deciding to vote for a non-politician, somebody who wasn't part of their system. Do they have any idea how highly irresponsible they were? I don't think they care. Because why would they continue to be so irresponsible as they are now? I mean, I get it. Donald Trump isn't everyone's cup of tea. But so what? If you don't like Donald Trump, the answer is not to try and take him down by alleging a bunch of nonsense and a bunch of lies. The answer is to come up with a better solution and campaign on that. Remember, Americans want something to vote for, not against, right? What we saw happen was truly a disaster, something every American, left and right, should be united in their disgust for. You do not mobilize and weaponize agencies of the U.S. government because you simply don't like the outcome of an election. It is a massive, utter shame that our country wasted 2 long years consumed with this so-called collusion investigation, an investigation generated by hate for someone outside the system. The will of the American people matters. Respect for the American people matters. If the Democrats and those in the so-called deep state want change, you influence the people. You lead the people. But you do not manipulate the system after the fact. No, that is not America.
There is going to be a vote in the House Judiciary Committee tomorrow whether or not to authorize subpoenas to demand an unredacted version of the Mueller report and all of the background materials. If they do vote out the authority for subpoenas, will the White House fight that?
Well, I think it's ridiculous. We went through 2 years of the Mueller investigation. We have, I mean, not only that, you read the wording. It was proven. Who could go through that and get wording where it was no collusion, no nothing? So there's no collusion. The Attorney General now and the Deputy Attorney General ruled no obstruction. They said no obstruction. And so there's no collusion, there's no obstruction, and now we're going to start this process all over again? I think it's a disgrace. These are just Democrats that want to try and demean this country. And it shouldn't be allowed. And I'll totally live by what the Attorney General, I have great respect for the Attorney General, I'll live by what he says, but I will tell you this. Nothing you give them, whether it's Shifty Schiff or Jerry Nadler, who I've known, he's been fighting me for half of my life in Manhattan. And I was very successful, thank you. But Nadler's been fighting me for years and years in Manhattan, not successfully. I will tell you, anything we give them will never be enough.
What about the fact
We could give them, it's a 400-page report, right? We could give them 800 pages, and it wouldn't be enough. They'll always come back and say, it's not enough, it's not enough. This thing has gone on for 2 years, and really it started long before that. It practically started from the time I came down the escalator, because this was a whole plot. Whether you want to use the insurance policy as a time frame, this was an insurance policy just in case Hillary Clinton, loses. Well, she lost, and she lost big. This has been going on for years. Now they want to keep it going on. We had, they spent over $30 million on an investigation. They found no collusion, which, by the way, was the most ridiculous premise I've ever heard of anyway, and you understand exactly what I mean. No collusion. There was no collusion. There never was. After $30 million, we're going to start this process again because Jerry Nadler wants to start it or because Schiff wants to start it. I'll rely on the Attorney General to make decisions, but I will tell you, anything that's given to them will never be good enough. You could give them the more documents that they've ever seen, and it would never be good enough. So I think it's somewhat of a waste of time. This is just politics at a very low level.
What about the fact that Congressman Nadler opposed the release of the Starr report in 1998?
Well, that's a good thing. It's very nice that you bring that up. The fact is that Jerry Nadler was on the opposite side of this, and he thought it was a disgusting, terrible thing to even think about giving the Starr report. But now we should give the Mueller report. And actually, the Mueller report is actually much tighter because the Starr report went to Congress. The Mueller report goes to the Attorney General. So there's a big difference. They made that because the Starr report got out of control with respect to going to Congress, because I guess lots of people had it that maybe shouldn't have had it and did bad things with it. So now they limited it to the Attorney General, and they did that specifically for that reason. So Jerry Nadler thought the concept of giving the Starr report was absolutely something you could never do. But when it comes to the Mueller report, which is different on our side, that would be something that he should get. It's hypocrisy and it's a disgrace. I will say this, look. There was no collusion. There was no obstruction. They were very disappointed. I don't know what they were thinking, because they all know. I guarantee you they go into a room between Nadler, Schiff, and the group, and they laugh like hell at how they've kept this thing going for 2 years. They laugh like hell. And I hope that this investigation now, which is finished, it's totally finished, no collusion, no obstruction. I hope they now go and take a look at the oranges of the investigation, the beginnings of that investigation. You look at the origin of the investigation, where it started, how it started, who started it, whether it's McCabe or Comey or a lot of them. Where does it go? How high up in the White House did it go? You will all get Pulitzer Prizes, okay? You're going to all get Pulitzer Prizes. You should have looked at it a long time ago, and that's the only thing that's disappointing to me about the Mueller report. The Mueller report, I wish, covered the oranges, how it started, the beginnings of the investigation, how it started. It didn't cover that, and for some reason, none of that was discussed. Now, if you look at the IG report, it's very serious. Now, we have another IG report coming out, hopefully very soon, and I think you're going to learn a lot. But you should look at the beginnings and where it started, the whole situation, because this has been a very, very bad thing for our country. The question was asked before about Russia, about Germany, about all of the different things that you and I discuss so often. This has been a very bad thing for the United States. It's been a total waste of time. But what hasn't been a waste of time is some very bad people started something that should have never been started. And I hope that's going to continue forward, because people did things that were very, very bad for our country and very, very illegal. And you could even say treasonous.